Hi, this is Ali Heathfield, and welcome to my office. I'm really excited to be able to share with you today. And the thing I was going to talk to you about is something I'd like to call Back to the Future. Sounds weird, huh? We all perhaps remember the film that was Back to the Future. But this is something that is for all of us. I want to start by telling you a story. And the story is about stories. Because when I was little, I grew up in a household of a mum, a dad and a sister. And my sister and I often talk together. And I say to her, "Do you remember when?" And the strangest thing is, her memories are completely different to the ones that I have. I don't mean that she remembers different things. What I mean is a particular event or a happening she remembers differently to the way I remember it. She has told herself a story about that event, as indeed so have I. But the stories are completely different because we have created those stories in our mind and we've retold them somewhere in the back of our mind, and they've become our memories. And actually, just jumping off onto a different point, people who perhaps don't always tell the truth can actually end up believing their own lies. Because if they tell them often enough, for them, in their world, it is the truth. Truth is very subjective. There is no objective truth, and I know that can be quite controversial, but we all have our own truth, whatever that is. So let's move on from there. Why is this important? Why do we have to look at stories if we want to go back to the future? And indeed, what does back to the future mean? Well, by reinventing the stories, by retelling the stories, by telling it in a different way, we can change the way we sometimes feel and we sometimes believe about the things we want to do. So let me ask you a question. Is there something in your life that you would really like to change and have wanted to change, but seem to struggle with it? Because very often it's a belief that we're holding somewhere deep down that actually is sabotaging, if you like, what we're trying to do. So how can stories help that? Well, I think the first thing to notice is to really ask yourself, what is it that's holding me back? What is it that's stopping me doing what I want to do? What is it that stops me making the change that I really, really want to make? And let me give you an example of this. I wanted to get up early in the morning. I always think it's a shame to waste the best part of the day. But I've always told myself a story that I'm not a morning person. And because I'm not a morning person, it's okay not to get up early in the morning. In fact, I don't like getting up early in the morning. That's what I used to tell myself. Until one day, I realised that it was just a story. Why wasn't I a morning person? Why do I tell myself I don't like getting up in the morning? I suspect because somewhere in the back of my mind, there is a story I've told myself about I don't like it. But how would I know if I didn't do it regularly? How would I know I didn't like it? Was it something I heard? Was it a belief I held from childhood? Where did all this come from? Well, for me, the bottom line was I retold the story. I started to tell myself, actually, I like getting up early in the morning. I am an early morning person. I enjoy getting up early. And I set my alarm, and as soon as the alarm goes off, I get out of bed. And one of the things I really, really like, as some of you might know, are the most beautiful sunrises. So one of the things for me that really turned my story around was getting out of bed, and obviously not every day, but the days when there was a beautiful sunrise, actually really, really enjoying it, drinking it in, starting the day with the beauty of the colours. And suddenly I thought, actually, I really do I really, really do like early mornings. I really do like getting up early. So you see, when we change our story, we can make it possible for us to do things and to change things that we've perhaps been struggling with before. So that's where going back to the future often helps. So let's take a quick look at this. In terms of the stories that you might have been telling yourselves, take a moment to just think. Think of one thing that you would, or you want to change, that you've tried to change before that you haven't quite managed. And really look and see what story you're telling yourself. Now, there's a caveat here, because we have to be really, really honest. So, not so long ago, I was talking to a coachee of mine, and she said, I haven't actually got time to do that. I'm so busy. And I thought, really? So I challenged her and said, really? You haven't got time, but you want to do this? She said, yeah, but I'm really busy. So I said, well, make time. And she sort of looked at me as if I was a little mad. How can I make time? She said, I'm really busy. I haven't got time. I said, well, okay, so let's prioritise. Where is your time being spent? So we went through all the things that she was spending her time on. And we looked at the amount of screen time. We looked at the amount of time she spent on Facebook. We looked at the time she spent watching the television. We looked at the time she spent working. We looked at the time she spent with her children. We looked at the time she spent planning a day. And we looked at her time that she spent talking to people on the phone. And then I said, okay, so let's prioritise this. What's more important to you? The thing that you want to be doing, or spending time watching your favourite programme on the television? And she thought for a minute. And she said, well, actually, it's not my favourite television, because I can record that and I can watch it later. I can watch it when I do have time or when I've finished. Yeah? So, have you got the time? And she said, yeah, if I make the time. That is exactly right, if we make the time. So be careful that you're not using something as an excuse rather than the story you're telling yourself. So when we actually got round to it, it wasn't she hadn't got the time. The story she was telling herself was that she was too busy and she hadn't got the time. But she got caught up in the busyness and the importance of the busyness. And when she actually started looking at it, she realised that this was a story she kept telling herself over and over again. And in fact, she was really caught up in this busyness all the time. So when we could unpick that and she could tell herself a new story, which went something like, actually, I can choose when I want to be busy. I can choose when I do things. I can choose to prioritise my time. I can choose what I spend my time on. And if I choose, I can change those priorities to match the thing that I want to do the most. The story suddenly becomes different. The doing of that thing that you want to do becomes different. So what is the story you're telling yourself? It's a great question, huh? So let me give you 3 ways to look at this. The first is, what story are you really telling yourself? So spend some time on this. Don't go for the first thing. Think about it. Is that really the story you're telling yourself? Or is there a story beneath the story? And even a story beneath that? When you've worked out what it is, work out, how long have you been telling yourself this? Is this something that's happened recently? Or is this something that's happened a few years ago? Is this happened when you were a child? Work out when. Because depending on when it is, will also depend on how you're going to look at that story. If you told it to yourself as a child, well, you're not a child anymore. You're an adult, so you can go back and look at it with new eyes. If you told yourself that because you were experiencing something at the time, then if you're no longer experiencing it and you can look and go, well, I came through that experience, what story would you now tell yourself about that? There's all sorts of ways to reframe the story to help you move forward. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, now that you know what your story is, what might your new story be? What will empower you? What will help you achieve what you want to achieve? What sort of things would you say to yourself? Will you say to yourself? What sort of things will you believe? Because when you've got that, you can start reprogramming the story you tell. Now, what I'd like to suggest is you just spend some time thinking about that. And if you'd like to share your thoughts, then I'd love to hear. Put some comments on the page, because I'd like to be able to help you and help the group change their stories so that they can achieve more. Now, there's one little thing that I'd like to share with you, and somebody shared it with me. And some of us have an acceptance when we say it is what it is, meaning can't do anything about it. Well, let me just challenge you in that and say, is it what it is? Or is it actually what you are accepting? If it's what you're accepting, then my question to you is, should you accept it? Will you accept it? Or is there something else you can be doing? If you just say it is what it is, then actually you're sort of coming from almost a victim mentality that you can't do anything about it. So let me challenge, if you hear yourself saying, well, it is what it is, change the phrase and say, it is what I accept. Now, I hope that's been helpful to you. I would love to hear from you. I would love to know what stories you're telling yourself, if you feel you can share them. And if you don't feel you can share them publicly in the comments below, then drop me a message and I'll be happy to message you back. Until next time, take care, have a great week, and look out for the next video. Take care. Bye.